Looking for some inspiration? You've come to the right show. Step into your divine feminine energy with me as I spill the tea on leadership and life. Hi, I'm Tracy M., your host here on Brave Girls, and I've got your back, and no mean girls are allowed. I've been called the fairy godmother of storytelling, and my gift is to unearth people's stories, share them, and make the world a better place for all of us. So sit back, relax, and listen in as we send some more positive vibes out into the universe. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to Brave Girls with Tracy M. To wrap up season 2 and transition to season 3, we are flipping the script once again. Instead of Tracy interviewing one of our amazing guests, I will be interviewing her. And once again, my name is Erin Vernon. I'm the founder and CEO of Everspark Digital Marketing, and I have the privilege of managing the digital and social media marketing for Tracy. So we are between season 2, which was subtitled Listen Up, and the upcoming season 3, which is subtitled Caring from the Heart. And I thought it would be the perfect time to sit down with Tracy to talk about what's next, why caregiving is such an important theme, and how it connects to her mission of amplifying women's voices. So, Tracy, welcome to your own podcast.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Erin. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you and talk about kind of like what we learned in season 2. And our guests really are amazing, and they have such wisdom to share with us as women. And then as we transition into season 3, which, caregiving, it's a big topic these days, and it ties right in with leadership and leadership development. So let's chat.
Let's dive in. So, Listen Up was all powerful, amazing women from the media. What were some of your key takeaways from season 2, Listen Up?
Yeah, I think they were all powerhouses, whether they were in the media or had previously been in the media or transitioned into the corporate space. Their perspectives were really interesting around getting to the facts. And so much of our media landscape today is so not about that. And I really loved how they felt like the media could be used for good, as opposed to for evil, and their role as a woman of color in the seat, whether they were the editor-in-chief or they were a radio news announcer or they had transitioned over into the corporate space. They all really had this through line for me around telling the truth and really around making sure that people's voices were heard and people were represented, and not marginalized in the world, and telling those stories, almost for social justice causes in some ways, in a meaningful way. And so I would say that not only did they have to have courage and be brave, they also had to be really strong writers, really strong listeners, a lot of the characteristics of leaders, right? And then holding people accountable, and making sure that they had talked to all their sources, both sides of the issue, whatever that may be, and then presenting sort of the story around that. So they were really storytellers, trying to help the audience connect the dots, for whatever the topic may be. So that was kind of my takeaway. I don't know, what was yours?
I love what you said about trustworthiness because I think that is so important. There's so much going on in the media, and there's also so much stuff that's not real that's been being put out there, or it's got such a spin to it. And I think if you can develop yourself as a trustworthy source and a beacon in this messy landscape, I think that is so inspiring. So that is something that stood out to me about this season is I think everyone kind of had that focus on being authentic, being trustworthy, and really developing that relationship with whoever their audience was.
Yeah, relationship was a big theme in that, you just, building relationships and the value of relationships, and serving others in whatever capacity you were in. So I would
Mhm.
agree with you.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. Yeah, I was thinking just the other day, I don't know if you saw this on Instagram, but they had a AI generated image of Mr. T, and they said he was 94 and he was celebrating his birthday. And so I said to my husband, I said, Mr. T cannot be 94. And I said, We need to look at his Wikipedia page. Well, sure enough, he's 74 or 72 or something like that. It was
Yeah.
AI generated. But if you weren't astute enough to just question, like, is this AI generated? Which, I mean, that's sort of, I would say, benign in some ways, but it's kind of scary that it portrays it as real.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the thing I think all of us are kind of struggling with is like, is it real? Is it true? What do I believe? And then it's easy to just kind of like shut down and like not keep up because it's too
Right.
much, you know?
Absolutely. I feel the same way, and that has me kind of stripping everything back and either doing my own research, to your point, when something looks fishy, or I look at the source and I say, well, if this is a video from so and so, I trust it. Or who's the byline on this? Oh, okay, it's that person. I know. I have a relationship with that person, and they're not going to tell me something that's not true. So it's scary, but it's good that we have people that are trustworthy and being truthful in in this world.
Yeah, yeah, and like stewards of the story, right?
Exactly.
And
Mhm.
really feeling that responsibility, I think really makes a difference.
Absolutely. Did you have any particular stories or anything that stood out that you want to kind of recap right now?
So you actually created a social media graphic, which I thought was brilliant, which was something that Dr. Tony Draper said. She's the publisher of the Afro, and it said media is not just about headlines; it's about building community, amplifying voices, and exposing injustice. And I think that that has always been sort of what her grandfather and great grandfather, who founded that. Publication, and now it's much more in the digital space. It really was about telling those stories, whether it was somebody's wedding or it was somebody's, educational accomplishment that wasn't being told in another news outlet, right? And as she has worked to put together the archives of the Afro, what really stuck with me was all the treasures that they have found. It's almost like the forgotten history that we weren't taught in US history, right? And those stories that did get told by the Afro that got buried or like not really told. And so I just, Dr. Tony Draper really stuck with me in terms of, I mean, first of all, she's brilliant and she's just such a like dynamic individual who I consider a really close friend. And so I would say it was that, quote that you pulled out from something that she said really resonated with me.
That was such a good quote. And I mean, just kudos to all the women that were on season two, and keep telling your stories and keep fighting the good fight, because you have an audience and we're ready to listen. So
Exactly, exactly.
yeah, and I want to kind of transition to season three, because we have up next Caring from the Heart, and we are focusing on caregivers. And so just kind of, curious why you chose this theme and why now is a good time for that theme.
Um, so I think I've been in the season of caregiving for the last 3 years very intensely for, I call them my ladies, um, my mom, my mother-in-law, my aunt. And one of the things that has been increasingly apparent to me is that um, there's a lot of us in that sort of sandwich generation that are caring for either children and parents or aunts and uncles and children or grandchildren or whatever. But one of the things that I've been reading a lot about is it's like a workplace trend, right? Like what are organizations doing to provide flexibility to the working woman, right? Who is basically who I mostly work with and coach. And
Mhm.
both working with the organizations to come up with, addressing these things that are impacting their organizational results and things of that nature. But AARP did a study that I found really fascinating. They found that there's been a 45% increase in family caregivers since 2015, so over the last 10 years. And they also said that there's approximately 16 million of us that are in this sandwich generation. And if you think about it, we're unpaid, right? This is the stuff that we're doing before people get on the bus and have doctor's appointments and all the things. And we're trying to like work through that. So if you're trying to be a working female in the world today, we're actually contributing like $600 billion in unpaid care to our economy each year, right? So we're not getting paid. We're doing it out of, the necessity of what we're dealt with, the cards that we're dealt with. Some of us have resources, some of us don't.
Right.
It's really difficult to find resources. There's no like one-stop shop. And everything is so hard to find. And, plus you're dealing with, does that caregiver want to age in place, or are they willing to go to someplace like you and I work together at Erickson, where we were the nation's largest provider of senior housing, right? The residents were our reason for being. And God bless them, right?
Right.
And we had so much joy as employees working with them and supporting them, oftentimes when they didn't have family. So, yeah, I just feel like now is the time. Like we're like at a pivotal time in history, I feel like, with, 60% of the women in the world graduating with college degrees, 40% going on to get masters. Like we're highly educated, and we are wired differently than our grandmothers, right? Who may have been either stay-at-home moms, secretaries, nurses, teachers. Not that there's anything wrong with those careers, but that was really their only option. And like now we have women with engineering degrees and, all kinds of opportunities to do things that our mothers and grandmothers didn't have. But yet we have this additional burden of, if you choose to have children, you choose to live not near your parents. So like our whole support system in our culture in the US, I feel like isn't really built for this.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. And, you and I talk a lot, your experience with older relatives that need care, me having younger children, it all hits the same, and I feel like I've been in work environments where I did it both ways. Sometimes I shared what I was going through with my employer, and sometimes that was well received and sometimes it wasn't. And
Correct.
sometimes I just hid it and just did
Yes.
what I needed to do and suffered in silence and showed up like I needed to. Um, like you said, we are wired so differently, and we're getting it done. And the expense is what worries me. And I'm so glad you're doing this season because I find it so healing to talk to you and vent to you about what we're going through. Probably the first 5-10 minutes of our calls, we just check in, see what's going on with each other. And I feel like I've read statistics about, when you vent to another woman about what you're going through, it releases serotonin in your brain. So I find it so healing, just the 5-10 minutes you and my other, female colleagues just talking about some of our struggles. So I can imagine how healing it's going to be to hear the whole season 3 as it unfolds. I think it's going to be really valuable to a lot of people.
I think so. And I've strategically invited specific people who are, in this caregiving season or providing support to caregivers. And so I'm really excited for what they're going to share with us as well. I think, to your point, not every workplace creates a sort of environment of psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an issue. And I too, it's like sometimes you share, sometimes you don't share. Sometimes you only share when it's a crisis,
Mm-hmm.
just because you don't know how it's going to be received or what retaliation you might face,
Mm-hmm.
depending on sort of the organization. And so I think it's time to have these conversations. And I think it's time to confront the reality of what the kind of the brutal facts of what the numbers are telling us. in
Right.
terms of the scope and scale and the rough order of magnitude of this situation.
Absolutely. And I mean, we know no one can hide that the caregiving duties fall very disproportionately onto women. And how do you see that impacting women's careers, mental health, as well as their leadership journeys?
So I think we're seeing the impact in that more women are opening small businesses to give themselves the flexibility to sort of manage their time as they need to.
Hmm.
So that's one statistics. I mean, and it's just exploding the number of women who have some area of expertise, just like you,
Hmm.
to be able to go out and land, 8 to 10 clients, and guess what? You've replaced your annual salary,
Right.
and you're the boss. Yes, it's a lot of stress to bring in the business and to pay the bills and everything, but no one's looking over your shoulder and saying you can't take your kid to their doctor's appointment,
Right.
right? You're
Hmm.
you're in charge. And so I think that's where a lot of women are just saying, you know what, it's time for me to just, let the parachute like go up when I jump.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of that. And then I also think that organizations are having to create like support networks inside the company that are psychological safe spaces, maybe
Hmm.
facilitated by a social worker, where people can come and then have that venting space and
Hmm.
not have it like leak outside of the walls of the Zoom call that they're on.
Right.
So there's some of that. I think I have my friend Bianca, who was in season one. She has a home health care agency in addition to other like, revenue streams that she has. But one of the things she's in the process of setting up is a support network of caregivers, and providing them sort of that almost like circle of support and community. Like she's creating a community for the caregiver, so that because you are at high risk for burnout. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if you just, allow yourself to just go 2 feet deep into it, you can drown,
Hmm.
right? And so, providing those places where people can come and share resources and learn more about what the options are out there.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So, but I think you know this, like 10,000 Americans turn 65 every day. That's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people.
It
That's a
is.
lot of people,
Hmm.
right? And then, and we saw that where we worked, where they couldn't build buildings fast enough. And that was presuming that people were, or pretending that people would sell their home and use that as their entrance fee and deposit to go then live out their last days in the community. Not everybody has those resources, and not everybody has that desire
Hmm.
to admit that they're aging, and they'd rather do it in their own home surrounded by all their junk, quite
Hmm.
honestly. Which that's like a whole nother thing is,
Right.
after they pass, before they pass, do they have their affairs together, and then after they pass, sorting through all of that.
Hmm. Right.
And we're not taught how to do that. Like, what school do you go to learn how to do that? The school of like trying to figure it out.
Right. There's no guidebook. I think we have each other. And again, talking about it is
Mhm.
so healing and so helpful, I think. And I know you've had a lot of personal experience, as you've already mentioned. Are there any of those that you want to kind of share that shaped your passion for the topic?
I think it's more about, and this is just who I am, is that when I go through something, I always ask myself, what lessons am I supposed to learn? And then I go out and teach those lessons to people,
I love that.
because I shift in who I am after an experience,
Hmm.
typically like a not so good experience. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I think I can figure it out and pretty smart, and I was struggling, right? So
Right.
I can only imagine if I can share that little nugget of what I went through and what I learned and what my advice would be to other people. And so I think that's my way of giving back, is through season three, having these conversations, because some of the people that are coming on, they're true experts in this space. Like it's a whole thing. Like it's
Hmm.
almost like a mini cottage industry, in my mind. But it intersects a lot with women in the workplace and women who are trying to have it all in terms of, their career, or if you're really ambitious and you're achievement oriented. Um, and that's where a lot of my coaching a lot of times is acknowledge what season of life you're in. Like you
Mm-hmm.
may be in the season of life where you're a new mom,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you might need to pump the brakes a little and then get back on the railroad track.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I also think that what happens is people realize they don't want to be back on the corporate track, and then they want to go out on their own.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that gets me thinking of kind of the ties between caregiving and leadership. And, you kind of alluded to self-awareness, knowing where you are and what you are capable of in this season, particularly. So other things that kind of cross over between caregiving and leadership, you have empathy, resilience, patience. Anything else you can speak to that kind of crosses into both areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all really good ones. Yes, you're going to have to be resilient. You're going to be, you just, don't know what the day is going to bring
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. Empathy, yes, you need to not only have empathy for the people that you're caregiving for, but empathy for yourself, right? And
Mm-hmm.
really not feeling guilty about self-care, and like really making that like you've got to, and we talk about this all the time, you and I, like fill your cup before you go out to serve other people. Patience for sure. And you've got to have like healthy ways to release any kind of anger or resentment that you have, because it ends up like boomeranging back to that person, and that's not your intention, but you're so frustrated
Mm-hmm.
that they're not working with you, right? And then you have to be able to have courageous crucial conversations that are very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times you have to do that at work, right? And people avoid that, right? They don't like the conflict, but sometimes you have to be direct, and sometimes you have to have the honest conversation that just says it's not safe for you to live where you live anymore. You need to get your affairs in order, right? Like, even if the person doesn't want to acknowledge that they're going to pass at some point, you have to hit that head on, right? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can't dance around it. So I would definitely say, and then even holding yourself accountable, right? And
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of lowering your expectations of, is it really realistic to do it all? Like,
Mm-hmm.
get an A plus at work and an A plus in caregiving. And so many of us, we have that perfectionist tendency and people pleasing tendency.
Mm-hmm.
And so really getting that under wraps and under control.
Right, right. And I think too, kind of hand in hand with the self-awareness is just flexibility and rolling with the punches. And even just this week, my son was sick Monday, Tuesday, sent him back to daycare. He was totally fine Tuesday, sent him back to daycare Wednesday. I get a call at 12:30. He's not
Come and
100%.
get them. Yeah, come and get them.
Come get him. He's not 100%. And, Wednesday morning I was, oh, I can work again. But then I just kind of, I want to acknowledge my feelings, but it helps me to not get too upset when things don't go as I planned them that morning, So I
Hmm.
just kind of said, okay, he's coming home. Let's play, let's watch his movies, and I'll work when I can.
Right.
So it's, and I'm not perfect at it, but I do think approaching things with, you know, giving myself grace, giving the
Yes.
situation grace, it helps because I can't control it, and
Right.
this is what's happening right now. So I think that helps me personally. Um,
I also think, honestly, you got to have a sense of humor. Like
yes,
some stuff, like some I have friends that, like, as we go through this together, we're like our own little like therapy group or whatever,
yes,
but you have to have a sense of humor,
hmm,
because if you don't laugh, you will cry.
right,
And so sometimes it's like, um, you kind of have to make light of things, as long as somebody didn't die in the
of
situation. But
course.
I mean, there's just some things that you have to make fun of. And I do think at work you have to do that too. Like, really, of
Hmm.
course, like this is a meme.
Yes,
Let's
yes.
do a meme. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, yeah,
No, I
definitely.
agree with that. That's a really good point. And, you know, texting your people, sending memes to your people to keep things lighter. And I also, while I was, caregiving, I was looking up massage appointments because I was like, I'm going to need some self-care when he is safely at daycare again.
Well, it's funny because I went last night. I have a membership at Massage Envy, and I'm on the wait list for this one particular therapist. And I was like, text me as soon as she has a cancellation, and I am there.
Yep.
And so she did last night. And I told my husband, I was like, I feel so much better today.
Hmm.
Just, and did I want to go later? It was like her last appointment. And I was like, oh, but then I was like, you know what? I need to do this. I've had a really stressful, couple months. This will be good for me. So yeah, it's like making time to do that stuff and not feeling guilty about it because your body needs rest, your mind needs rest. And you can't keep burning the candle at both ends,
Right.
right? Which
Right.
I think we're all famous for.
Hmm. Yeah. But yeah. And I think just finding whatever balance you can, like, yes, right now you might not be sleeping, you might be having a tough time, but schedule for when you know you can schedule rest, schedule self-care. So I think that is so important. Um, so I'm wondering if you can give just a couple nuggets, a couple sneak peeks without too many spoilers of maybe who we're going to be talking to in season 3 or some of the conversations. What can you share?
Yeah, well, I can share a couple things. Two people I'm super excited about. The first one is Dr. Tony Stackhouse Bulware, who is got her PhD in counseling, I think it is, and she has noticed the within she's done a lot of research first of all, so she's basically a social scientist, and she's going to talk a lot about some of the services from a behavioral health standpoint that she offers around mental health, and so I'm super excited about that. And then the other one is a woman who for the last 11 years has been caregiving for her mother who had early onset Alzheimer's, and she has become a caregiver advocate and is specifically in the Alzheimer's community and dementia community. And she is basically a Instagram influencer. That's how I found her. I think she's down in Texas. She was trying to take care of her mom long distance, and then she realized that that wasn't working. So she basically quit her job and was like, okay, I'm going to be her full-time caregiver. Her mom is now nonverbal and bedridden.
Mm.
And she shares her caregiving journey. And she has had to do it all by herself. She was an only child, and I find so much hope when I watch the content that Jessica puts out there. And it's hard, it's
Mhm.
hard, it's gut wrenching sometimes. But
Mhm.
she shares her story, she shares her mom's story, her love of her mom, and there's a large percentage of us that are going to have dementia or Alzheimer's. Cognitive decline is real. We still don't know what causes it, how to cure it, those types of things. And so and that's one of the things that I've been dealing with my mom. And so Jessica's ahead of me on the journey.
Mhm.
And so I really look to her as a leading authority in this space of a caregiver who was trying to caregive from afar.
Mhm.
And then I have a couple other ones, some really good ones lined up, but those are the ones that I'm super excited about right out of the gate. So yeah, more to come, but I'm hoping my intention with all of this, I always think it's important to set an intention. My intention is to um, have the conversations, right? And really create that community where people feel safe to
Mhm.
admit that you're in the sandwich generation and you're struggling, and you're having good days and bad days. And I just want people to know they're not alone.
Yep. Mhm.
That's my main thing is you're never alone.
Mhm.
And so many of us, our families do look to us as the family leader in this
Mhm.
space.
Mhm.
And so taking those principles of leadership and all the good knowledge that we've all been trained in as leaders and really applying it to our family situation, I think is going to be really important in the next 5 years for so many women, working women especially.
Right. To your point, it's going to come for most of us. So, um, yeah, I can't wait to listen. I think it's going to be a super inspiring season. And kind of just one more thought before we wrap up. You have shared a lot, but any other tidbits that we haven't discussed, ways to support either yourself or the other caregivers in your life, at work, in your community? Any last minute thoughts on that?
Um, well, so one of the organizations that kind of stands out to me that has a ton of resources is AARP.
Mm.
And I know it's for people over 50, I think it is. But anybody can go to their website, and they really have taken this seriously. They've done a lot of research. They've put together a lot of resources. And so I think people need to pay attention. Even if you're 30, you can go to AARP's
Mm-hmm.
website, because it's not just for the old people. It's about the
Mm-hmm.
caregivers too, right? And so I would say that would be a really good place for people to start. I read a lot of their like in their newsletter and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because they'll even publish things like research in the field of Alzheimer's, what's going on with
Mm-hmm.
that. So they have clinical information, but then they also have they advocate. They're an advocacy group, right? A lobbyist group in Washington and in state capitals. So I think they're an organization to watch because they kind of have our backs in many
Mm-hmm.
ways.
Yep. Yeah,
And they're
absolutely.
they're bipartisan, right? So
Mhm.
it's more about the wellness of the human, right? And so that's why I like them.
That's a great tip. They do have great content. And I feel like it runs the gamut from serious to fun to
Yes.
educational. So that is a really good tip.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, shameless plug, if you have not listened to season 2, listen up. Please go back and listen. And Tracy, thank you for letting me interview you. This is always so fun. And you really shine light into the world and share your heart with everyone. And I just appreciate you so much. And I know that I'm excited for season 3. I'm sure the listeners are excited. So everyone who's listening now, make sure you're subscribed to Brave Girls with Tracy M wherever you get your podcasts, so that when season 3, Caring from the Heart, comes out, that you will get that first episode right away. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. I hope you found a gem or two that will motivate you to change your mindset, pursue your dreams, and fulfill your soul's purpose. I believe that we can go farther and faster when we connect in the spirit of positivity and understand how we individually can serve humanity. The world needs more love, so keep shining, ladies. I can be found on my corner of the interwebs at tracym.com, and I'd love to connect on social. Just Google me and my SEO will tell you more about what I'm up to as I step into my purpose as a storyteller. I love you, brave girls. Now, it's time for you to step up your game and become the best possible version of you. I believe in you, and you've got this.